Okay, let's start the sector analysis. So here is our sector analysis, which is due on August next month, in the middle of next month. So for the agenda today, we're going to start from the purpose of the analysis, because that's intended to tell you why you're going to do this, and you will keep that in mind to do all this from the research to the writing things. Then we'll move on to the required elements, so you can know which part you want to focus on when you're doing the writing. The logistics, we'll talk about the length, deadline, and Raveja will give you some recommendations on the resources. I think you all want to know. You don't want to get lost as the data see. Finally, we'll talk about, Raveja will talk about the teamwork strategies. So for the sector analysis, I think you all know we are doing the top-down portfolio constructions. So I want to emphasize here, the purpose of the analysis is very essential for your doing the right thing, because it can lead your research and you keep you focused all through the research. When you look at the sector, you will find, you can say, the tons of issues, especially in current situation. There's so many uncertainties, and how this will come to influence the following returns. So we're not going to write on like encyclopedia. So the top-down, the purpose of this analysis will give you the guideline to go through the analyze the issues that we want to emphasize, or why we are going to do the resource, what's the solution we are looking for. So let's come to the top-down portfolio construction. We are doing the RedHawk fund portfolio through a top-down construction. According to our IPS, which is the investment policy statement, RedHawk Fund is using this top-down approach. It comes from the global economy, then look at the local economy, then we'll come to the sector here. Today we are going to talk about. After we're doing the sector analysis, we can go further to the specific business. I think some of you may already know this approach or this method, but I just stress here in case some of you may not. So the top-down approach is like from the macro economy to the industry, and then to the specific company. So it start from looking at the company, like we look at the GDP, the inflation rate, the interest rate, and the whole economy. Then for the sector, we look at the whole sector's growth, because the whole economy's growth is not equally divided into each sectors. Each sector has their own drivers for their growth. So we are looking at the different sectors' growth drivers. Then finally, we can choose the best performance company or industry. So through the sector analysis, we can make information-driven decisions. That means we come from the macroeconomy, but we trickle it down to identify the sectors. So for today's purpose, the sector analysis or your current assignment, we want you to specify this sector. There are specific growth drivers. Given the whole economy drivers, the growth drivers, the specific drivers, or there are specific risks, and because the different sectors, they will generate different returns and risks. Based on this, we can get our asset allocation plan to direct our further business business valuation. Do I have any question about the information driven? So I'll talk about the align with our fund financial goals, because the information is we are looking for to align with our financial goals. We all know, according to our IPS, we have some constraints and objectives. So we have some constraints is that we having the benchmark with SP 500 fossil fuel free index we want to demonstrate our expertise or our ability to run this fund. So we want to beat SP 500 fossil fuel free, right? So we are given some constraints to close to the SP 500 asset allocation weight, but we also give given some flexibilities to deviate from the SP 500 asset allocation weight. That is, we can have like each sector, we can have at most 10% deviation. That's why we want to, that's the part we want to start to beat our SP 500 benchmark. So we count on you to make a sector analysis to direct us, to give us some directions or recommendations on the asset allocation, so we can get a return from the asset allocation part. I give you our historical asset allocation contribution to our return and stock selection attribution. So the left part you can see here is, oh, can you, sorry. So the left part is the asset allocation contribution to our past 2 years returns. And this part is stock selection attribution to our whole returns. We can see we get some good attributions from the stock selection, but mild attribution from asset allocation. Then we want to make some improvements this year. So we're really looking forward to your asset like sector analysis to give us some insights on how we can make this attribution more than last 2 years. So the next one is why we do sector analysis is to reducing the risk by diversification. We, as you know, the whole economy is driven by some factors, the different sectors are growing at different speed or different momentum. In general, we could say technology, some sectors like technology driven or consuming driven sectors are good, more promising in returns, but like healthcare is also a promising sector, but healthcare is kind of risky given the policy influence and the uncertainty on like their drug tests. So if you want to reduce the risks, like hedging risks in the future, or you're looking at our whole portfolio, you think the whole portfolio, if we put too much risk on that sector, we want to hedge some risk from this stable sector, maybe this sector is not so profitable, or their earning is not so outstanding, but it can hedge risks. You can recommend, give us some recommendations based on that basis. So that's why we want to do the sector analysis. It's all the main idea to do it is to going through the sectors. We can get a sector allocation plan based on the recommendations. I'll talk about later about the recommendations. But here I want to point out some special issues that you could include into your report or your analysis, but not necessarily all of them, or you can add anything. I think there's something definitely I didn't list it here. So one is the supply chain disruption. So we all know as the pandemic is overwhelming in the whole, let me move to the next page. You can see the COVID-19 is causing a huge decline in global trade. Actually, there are some supply chains problems we can see like every day. I recently read a report about the Ford manufacture site. They are lack of the lack of some equipment from Mexico because of the COVID-19. So the whole factory has to put into pause. So the same thing happens like every industry, every sector, like the drug company, the healthcare company, they rely on some medical materials from China and India, which was disrupted by the COVID-19 seriously. So I think it's very important to consider this risk when you talk about these sectors, because it is kind of a new issue. Also, one relevant issue is some companies already moving on their supply chains to other parts to make it more reliance on concentrated supply source. But this can raise costs, and in a short term, the company's earnings could get impacted from this resilience improvement. So this could be another factors you want to include it in your report. Another big problem is job market. I think most of you are looking close at the job market. Is next page, sorry. I'll move to the next page. Yeah, the jobless claims is very it is very ugly, I think. But I also read the reports. There's some connected issues. Like recently, I read a report about insurance. That's past a couple months, the American people lost the insurance more than the year in 2008. So the past recession. So this is very shocking, and also it is very worth studying when you look at the healthcare sectors, because some insurance and drug companies really rely on the insurance income. If they lost the registration, insurance registration, they lost the premium payment. How could they afford the further earnings? So also the job market is also a drive of the American consumptions. And for the American economy, we all know the big part or the major part is driven by the domestic consumptions. If the job market is weak, how that domestic consumptions getting strong? So that's a question. And some consumption more related sectors would take more close eyes on that. So there's some special issues connected to more close to connected to some specific sectors. Also, there's some pandemic impact on behavior changes, like the workers, employees, they are concerning their safety during the working time when at the workplace. So the companies want to ensure them the safety, and the relevant costs will be added to the like operating costs. Similarly, there's one more thing is about the productivity. Can companies still keep the same productivity when in this pandemic period? Like a recent news is Boeing got a new contract of I think it's a military airplane. I don't remember which type, but a military contract. But could it keep the production as the same as before? Could they add some more costs to the production? That's a question for the Boeing, also for for that sector. Also, there's some other uncertainties like the vaccine. Yesterday, I think you know that there's a good news about the vaccine. For the first stage of the vaccine, they all got the positive results, which is very promising. But still a lot of uncertainties here. And this year is a presidential election year. Some policies could change, like healthcare sector is highly impacted by the regulations. Could the like insurance policies, we know some years before a single policy change gave a big change to the insurance company of their returns. So political issues, especially in the presidential election year, is very critical, especially for some sectors. I would say healthcare, totally. And trade war, we know China and the US are having not only trade war, only political wars. So could affect some some sectors. Read news about the U.S. is going to ban some Chinese-based apps. Already there's already some regulations on the supply chain agents that prohibit the supply chain agents from using Huawei or some other Chinese communication companies' products. It takes some, I think it takes some time. They give some time to arrange the change of the equipment, but that will add some more costs or delays on the supply chain. So that's all the issues you want to include or you want to look at when you're doing your research. Let me see. So these are the purpose. The purpose is essential. It's because you're going to keep that in mind when you're doing your research, so you can write to the point when you write down your report. So now we talk about the required elements that you can look at to organize your report. There's 4 elements. One is sector overview. That is what I talked before, what the sector is. Then the new part is the RedHawk fund sector overview. That is where you are going to look at our fund sectors. The third one is a deep dive. I'll talk about further, and then the conclusion, which is your recommendations about this sector. So for the sector overview, you're going to talk about the historical performance of this sector, which give you an insight on what's going on further. And then you're going to talk about what's trending now, like maybe some new issues happens, or maybe some hot issues happens to give a drive of this sector or give a risk of this sector. I also recommend you can look at the CAPE ratio. There's a ratio called CAPE ratio, it's spelled by CAPE. It's brought by the Robert Shiller. He's a Nobel Prize winner. And the CAPE ratio is instead of looking at the P ratio of the trading 12 months P ratio, it looks at the past 10 years P ratio to get the sense of how the economy, or you can look at this sector, how the sector performance really like. So second part is the RedHawk fund sector overview. You can look at our team file. There's our current holdings. And Reveja recently sent you a statement about our most recent position of our fund. So you can see the current holdings, which stocks are we holding right now. And then for your specific sector, for your assigned sector, you're going to talk about the performance and how far we are from the target allocation. We also have our asset allocation folder under the file. So you can see last year we have asset allocation plan. Then in spring, we did a tactical changes to the allocation plan, get a new target allocation. So right now you can see how far we are from that target allocation. But this year we are going to do another adjustment. So we want you also give us some shopping list. Like, would you recommend to overweight this sector, or you want us to underweight this sector because there's too much risk, or it's not as much profitable as other sectors, or it's not growth at the whole economy growth rate. So that's the shopping list. You can dive into specific industry. So that's the next part you're going to write about. It's because under the sector, there's subsectors. Like the healthcare, they have insurance company, they have drug maker, pharmaceutical sector, subsector, so, or industries. Especially in this economy situation, even in the same sector, different industries could have very different return and risk. So the topic should include but not limited to the industry description. We want you to look at the specific implications that we can add value to our fund, or in other words, we can do some overweight or underweight and of this sector. So we don't want you to just say some industry is promising or not promising. We want you to give us some very material suggestions about why we are going to underweight this sector, or we want to overweight this sector. So especially like we already have, for example, we have in the industry sector, we already have Lockheed Martin, the airplane maker. And are we going to have another airplane maker? Maybe not, if we want to keep the keep our diversification well, and we want to keep have the correlation low. So it's, when you look at our current holdings, if we have already this industry, maybe we want to look at other industry instead of the already holding industries. So for the last part, based on all the research and the recommendations analysis, you will give us your conclusion. That is, for this sector, would you think we should overweight, underweight, or just hold what we are doing right now? Or you can give us any opinions. We are really open and appreciate your opinion on different industries within the sector that is mixed, so we can look at further. Actually, I think this is also a reference for your next quarter's valuation. Maybe some of our team members working on the valuation, stock valuation, he will look back at the sector analysis to see which company he or she want to pick for the valuation. Let me see the next page.
Can I have a question?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, can I ask for the shopping list under the RedHawk Fund sector overview? So is it just about the sector itself, or is it have to be to include the list of stocks that we recommend for that sector?
You mean the shopping list?
Yeah.
Yeah, the shopping list. You can also talk about our current holdings. In addition to your recommendations on other adding, or because some holdings you can recommend if you think it's not a good holding, you want to sell. We would appreciate about that as well. That's your question?
Oh yeah. So you said that the shopping list is when we we talk about our sector if we don't want to, if we want to change the allocation of the sector, if it's too higher, or because I was confusing during that part.
It's actually so. I didn't make it clear. Actually, it should include two parts. One is if you want we make it higher or lower or the same. One is if higher, how could be higher, or if lower, how could be lower. You want to take out um, uh, some industry or some our current holdings, or you want to add some industry or some current holdings you want to add weight to that industry.
Cool. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
And it's also more broad in that you don't really have to have like particular stocks or anything. It can just be sub-industries, right? Within communication services, you're like, okay, we don't have gaming stocks, we should add gaming stocks. Or you're like, you know, these telecom like T-Mobile and stuff like AT&T, we should add those or remove those, something like that. Or if you actually have like a list of a dozen stocks that you think are great, you can also provide that. Like, it's totally up to you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Any other question about the requirement and or the purpose of the analysis? So I'll go to the logistics issue. So for the length, we require minimum 3 pages of the report. Time News Roman size 12, single page, and the deadline is the May of next month. So after that, you can enjoy your summer break. Also, please use data, charts, and reference. Included them in your report and give us the citation. I mean the resource. Give us how the source come from. Any questions?
I added that last sentence, like cite all the things to for emphasis, because we really, really want you to, whatever, maybe you used a dozen articles, maybe you use like 35 articles or like 300. Even if you're just picking like one single sentence from some source, um, when we are doing like the actual asset allocation optimization, sometimes we have disagreements too, like, okay, you know, this sector allocation or sector report says this, but I don't really think it's appropriate. Then we go to the source and like look at the reasoning and why. So please make sure whatever you're using, you can use like in the resources tab, we have a whole bunch of stuff listed and more. You know, other websites or sources that you already know, maybe people you know who are experts on these things. But make sure to just like, you know, tell us where your reasoning comes from.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was a lot of information. Does anyone have any questions or something to add, perhaps?
Do we have an example sector analysis report in our?
Yes. All right, Rang, I'm gonna share the screen now.
Okay, I'll stop sharing.
Thank you. So we do have examples. So if you go in Teams and you go to our files and sectors, taking forever. So within each sector, you'll see the summer research report or sector analysis report or something along those lines. They're not all called the same. I think, yeah, this is the summer sector research, right? So we don't do energy sector anymore ever since we went fossil free, but let's say communications. We do have, there you go, summer sector research. So you will find this in each sector, and this is the report that was done last year in 2019. You can use this as, I guess, a starting point or to get ideas of some of the things you could include. But I would not use this as an example per se, because last summer when the analysts did this, they did not have access to the Bloomberg terminal, right? They were like all not even in Seattle U, and we did not have the remote terminal access at that time. And so they were working off a limited, just like what was readily available on the internet. We this year have a lot more resources. The Bloomberg terminal is the biggest one. So although I would use it as a starting point to get ideas and such, I would not completely rely on it for like formatting purposes, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, let's see. So other than that, Bloomberg Terminal is, of course, your biggest resource, because anything you can find on the internet will probably be on there already. Although, it takes a little while getting used to using it. Feel free to jump in at any time if you have any questions. All right, so some suggested functions are just the Bloomberg intelligence function. If you have used it before, you know how easy it makes like sector analysis. But if you have not, right, you just type BI in there, it goes to Bloomberg Intelligence, and then it has this industries tab, and then, whatever industry you have or whatever sector you have, you go in there. And Rong was talking about sub-industries. This is basically what we mean, because even within a sector, there can be so many things going on. So you can go into investment management, banking, fintech, blah, 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 insurance, right? And then you can tell us, and each of these will have a whole bunch of reports, and they tell you what the big players are, performance, everything. So lots and lots of stuff. Obviously, you're not going to read all of it, but you can kind of just read the headlines and pick and choose which reports or which news articles you want to read about a particular sub-industry. And then this makes it a lot easier. But we don't want to rely completely on this. This is a great, great place to read about what other people think. So make sure to also include some things that you think about this sector. Of course, your views will be informed by what all the experts think. But we don't want to completely be like, okay, I took these 10 reports from Bloomberg and then I took like a paragraph from each one of them and I'm done. We really want to kind of take that as a basis to form our own opinions and then work on that and build on that. Other stuff, there is the BRC function, which is a research portal for like individual securities. So if you're looking at some of our holdings, or if you're thinking of potential stocks to add, you could use that. Then of course there's like equity research. So you just type, let's say T-Mobile is something I was looking at recently. You go in there, and there's a whole dashboard, a whole menu of things you could do with that company. If you want to look at what other analysts are saying about recommendations, it's called the A&R function. So while you're doing sector analysis, you're probably not going to conduct like a valuation on every single equity you come across, all right? So at that point, it might be okay to rely on, say, okay, there's a 76% consensus buy rating on this this equity, and then you can read some of the reports by some of the firms and then think about what you think of it. That is if you go like super detailed into any one equity, this might be useful. Another thing is the company classification browser. So one of our analysts pointed out that some websites were listing a particular stock in IT sector and others were listing in communication sector. So this is because classifications are arbitrary, and whatever, if that organization is using a particular classification method, then it will depend on that. So here you can see it says classification BICS. We actually follow GICS because that is what our benchmark uses. Our benchmark is the S&P 500 fossil free, right? So you want to make sure you go to GICS, because otherwise, it might show you something else. Like T-Mobile, here it shows us it's within the communication services sector. And let's see, is BICS probably the same for T-Mobile, but let's go to another company, and you might find that this is different. For example, in BICS, this is like technology. EA is classified in the IT sector. However, in GICS, which is what we use, it's communication services. So make sure to, keep in mind that our benchmark uses GICS. And so when we're doing sector analysis, for example, if you are doing the IT sector, you don't want to include electronic arts in your sector analysis. However, if you are communication services, then you would probably, if you think that's a good buy, or if we have it and you want to say like we should get rid of it, then you want to include that in your report. And it has happened in the past. People have confused like, hey, I'm talking about consumer discretionary, and they were talking about Johnson and Johnson and Target, but our no, Target is actually consumer discretionary. I think they're talking about consumer staples or something, right? And they must have used some other classification code, right? So yeah, just keep that in mind. Any other Bloomberg functions anyone wants to recommend for this?
What was the last function you said? CCB?
Yes, that's right. And it's in this file as well. So it's like BI, BRC, CCB, and then of course other equity research functions as well.
Okay.
Yeah, if anyone wants to recommend any others, just let us know. We'll add it to this file, or we're gonna add this file to Teams anyway, so you can just add it yourself. All right. For the library website also has good resources. IBIS World, some of you might already have used it for the valuation you did. And this is great for industry research. For example, if I want to know where the farming or industry in the United States is going in the next 5 years, I will go to IBIS World and look it up, and they will give me some trends like, okay, this is how the industry has been performing. These are some of the things that affected. These are the major players, and this is where we think it is going in the next few years. So lots of great information. It's a long report that might be useful. Statista is always useful for visual information and graphs and statistic. Then there's of course for individual equities you want to use maybe Morningstar, Value Line, Mintel. There's other stuff as well. And then since sector analysis is also focusing more on macroeconomic things, you want to look at government websites, right, that issue information routinely on unemployment rates, interest rates, inflation rates, etc. So the Treasury website, then the Bureau of Economic Analysis, then the NBER, websites like that. And then for individual companies, you can just go like Google company name and investor relations. That website will give you a lot of information. And if you just want to go to one central place where you can find any company's SEC filings, you can just go to the SEC website and look it up. Also, our asset allocation follows the business cycle theory. So if you want to read about the US business cycles, they are declared on NBER. So you can just go on the NBER website. Let me show you if I can. My Google Chrome. Give me a sec. There you go. Let's see. There's the NBER website. And so I'm going to go to the home page. And then here it says frequently requested items, business cycle, recession and recovery page, right? So here in this latest report, they've said that February 2020 was like the peak of economic activity in the United States. And so that has been determined. And then they have determined that now we are in a recession. And then, when there's a trough or when it's like the absolute minimum point, they will tell us, okay, now we're going to be in an expansion. You can, of course, formulate your own opinions on this, but this is kind of like the authority on what happens in the US. Then you can look at Damodaran's website. This is a professor who's kind of like the expert, the guru on valuation and corporate finance, and he has a lot of materials, data, and also like some of his classes on here. So you can look at corporate finance valuation, but for sector analysis, you probably want to look more at investment philosophy, and not the entire thing, but some of it. maybe like market efficiency, maybe. As you can see, there's a lot of stuff. He has some stuff about market timing, technical analysis. So you might want to look at that. Lots of great information there. What else? Let's see. Yeah, and then the past reports that we just talked about are on Teams. There's my Teams again. There you go. Past reports are on Teams, but use them as a starting point, not as an example, because we have a lot of resources. And Rang mentioned you should also look at our current holdings. So every month I upload the broker reports, and I will continue to do so, giving us our portfolio breakdown. And this is simply a folder called broker reports, I believe. Broker statements. There you go, right? So every month, this is the report that I just download from the from our broker, right? This will give you our holdings and where we are and so on. And then there's also this Excel file of our positions, loading, which we make a few tweaks to. So we classify all the stocks according to the sector we use, GICS classification. It's very slow, right? So it'll say, okay, Adobe is in the IT sector, FMC is in materials, and so on, right? And then based on that, we provide this table, which says, okay, this is our target allocation, this column right here. And currently, based on this other tab, we are here at this point, right? And so the gap is this much, right? We either need to add or we are very close. For example, this one for the industrial sector, we are quite close to our allocation. We probably don't need to change it very much. But for this one, consumer staples, our target allocation is 15%, and we're only at about 11%. So we want to add one or two more stocks to reach that allocation. So yeah, you can take a look at this. You can say, okay, at the end of this year, we're this far from our target allocation. And this target allocation will change, but you can also provide, if you think it should remain unchanged, you can just say, okay, we can buy two more stocks from so-and-so sub-industry. All right, questions or comments? Are you all awake? Very warm afternoon. Okay.
Yeah, this week is gonna be really, really warm.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad.
Very sleepy. Okay. It's just so slow. Alrighty. So yeah, any old analyst or new analyst or anyone have any suggestions to add here that you found may be helpful or you know of? Well, if you do, you can also add it later. Cool. And then one last part is traditionally in our fund, we have not had such a large group size. We usually been between like 8 to 15 people total in the fund. And this time we're like, we recruited a lot of people, and so we're growing. And so in the past, we've done all our valuation and sector analyses. If you look at the past year's report, you'll see only one person worked on this, right? But as our team grows, we have like 16 people to work on the sector analyses, but only 8 sectors. So we decided we would do some sort of a team approach. And so, as you all know, you'll be working with one old analyst or experienced analyst who knows something about this stuff, and maybe one other new analyst. And then they will work with you, so it will be a group project, but they will also be serve as kind of mentors, kind of make it easier for you to transition into the fund. And also, if you have any questions about valuation, about the fund, about how things work, or about the subject matter itself, they should be able to help you a little bit with that. But this, we really, really want you to understand that this does not mean that, we're just going to split up the work. It doesn't mean that the work is somehow easier, or like, it's just half the work for each person now. We have the benefit, like I said, of more resources, and now you have 2 or 3 brains working on the same thing. So we expect that this will be higher quality. Um, and we really don't want you to do like, okay, let's say if I'm in a team with Arden and Crystal, I'll be like, okay, Arden will do all the, look at the sector overview, what's been going on in the sector in the past 10 years, and then Crystal will look at our fund, and then I will look at I don't know, some sub industries, and then we'll just write a paragraph each and submit that report. That is really not going to work, because all of these things kind of feed off of each other, right? So Arden looked at the past years, and he said, okay, this is what the sector is doing. Based on that, he formed some opinion on, okay, when things are good, when consumer confidence is high, the sector does great, but then when consumer confidence is low, the sector is not doing so great. And then Crystal looked at our portfolio, and she's like, okay, you know what? I find the opposite thing, but they're not going to be able to communicate or reconcile those opinions if they don't communicate about what they found. So what we're thinking this would look like is more of, it's totally fine for like the 3 of us to look at different aspects of it, but then we try to come together and discuss like, hey, this is what I found in looking at our portfolio, and then Crystal will tell me, hey, this is what I found when looking at all these government websites, this is what they're saying, and then Arden will be like, hey, this is what I found has happened with the sector in the past. This is when it does well, and this is when it does not do well. And then we put all of our opinions together and we say, okay, we think in the next year or so, this is what's going to happen with the sector, and so we should do so and so with this, if that makes sense. So although, and I mean, this is not easy, right? Because when you're working in a group, there will be like, maybe you have scheduling conflicts, like we can never get everyone together, or you have just conflicts of opinion. Like, I don't know, someone want to help me with this? Nee, are you able to talk?
For what? For the conflict that you say?
Yeah, I'm just asking. So, can you tell me what do you think will happen with the IT sector in the next 1 year? Like, is it gonna be good, bad? Is it gonna be like, yeah?
I think it's gonna be. I think it's gonna be good because during the pandemic, IT sectors happens to not really underperform the entire market. And actually, I believe that we were able to sustain during the pandemic is thanks for a lot of because we have Zoom, we have Teams, we have a lot of technology tools to help us to work from home. So I believe that in the future, technology sector will still doing good. I'm just wondering. I'm just worried about some like risk about this IT sector is the data privacy and like things happen with TikTok and the U.S. government. So that's definitely some risk that we can see in this IT sector.
Okay, thank you, Nee. But then I'm gonna say, if you're working together, I'm like, you know what? I read this article that says like that's totally wrong. Like, my article said that sure, it has survived and done well in the pandemic, but they hired a whole bunch of people, and when the pandemic is over in like 2 months, all of those people are gonna lose their jobs, and the IT sector is gonna tank, and they're gonna lose all their revenue, and nobody's gonna be home to like be on the internet all day long. Right? And so we have this difference of opinion. But then, Nee, can you tell me why you think those things about the IT sector over the next year? Like, what is your opinion based on?
So I would say, oh, my opinion can be based on like a single source, like I usually read Barron's or something like that, and also because I think because I read when I read Barron's and when I read The Economist, they may have different opinions. So I think reading from like different analysts or like different opinions can be really beneficial, and maybe both of it can be right because it may be someone may know a lot about technology, but some analysts may not know a lot about technology. So if we have like a conflict in a team, we can sit down, we can read the articles together, and we can come to like a compromise that work best for our fund at this time. So I think, yeah, that's what I think.
Okay, yeah, thank you for explaining why you think that. So let's say we read the articles together and we discussed some more about where our opinions are coming from. Thank you, Nee, for playing along. But say, okay, I'm totally on board with Nee now. I think the IT sector is doing great. And I think, so I'm going to say one sub industry and then you can counteract with another, right? So I think we should totally put all of our portfolio's money in like all the hardware companies, let's say something, right? So what do you think?
I would say that because we want our goal is to diversify our fund. So if we put everything in the hardware, it will be really high risk. And also we all acknowledge that software is the main, like a cash cow of the IT sector. So putting everything in the hardware would not make a lot of sense to me.
I totally disagree. Like software might have been a cash cow, but I mean, you know, it's old news now. Nobody's using software anymore. These views are not my own, by the way. So, yeah, but basically, you can see, right? Disagreements are going to happen on many points, probably along the way. And we realize that, but we have put in like quite a bit of thought into this. Uh, and so see a couple of messages, but yeah, we've put in quite a bit of thought into this, and this we think currently this is the best way to approach this. However, keep in mind this is something new we're doing, and so if there are like really big problems with your group, feel free to come to us, come to your manager, or you know, to me, or even like if you feel like it's just really stressing you out or something, feel free to rope in Kathy on this if you feel more comfortable with that. And you know, feel free to give us feedback along the way. We really want to see how this works out, because then we will have to plan accordingly for the coming quarters, because we will still continue to be quite a large team. So, and also if you have more ideas or better ideas on you know, how things could work or how we should do things, we always will be very open to that sort of feedback. um and yeah, we also got asked like how would it work with like managers. So first I want to answer Nianzu's question, like how our team's set. So if you remember, you all submitted like your sector preferences, and so we matched people who wanted to work on one sector with an old analyst who also wanted to work on that sector. So it's largely based on sector preferences, and then we made sure it would be a good mix of new analysts and older analysts who know a little bit stuff, so that we could create that kind of mentorship dynamic. So Nianzu, that is to answer your question. But also each team, which is like 2 or 3 people, has like a manager assigned to it. That is also based on sectors. For example, I think I'm in charge of the IT, consumer discretionary, and consumer staple sector, because those are the sectors I specified when we also, like all managers also have to fill out like a preference list of sectors at the beginning of every quarter. So, you know, that's how we match. Someone asked me at the Monday meeting, which was much shorter, they asked me like, oh, are you required to check in with your manager once in a while or something? There's no such requirement, and we're not really going to police how you do your group work. But basically, all I'm saying is you all should be ideally on the same page with what opinions you have and what recommendations you're making. And like I said, this does not mean like every single article that you use, everyone is reading it, like 3 people are reading the same stuff. But it does mean that, you know, if Nee reads about, let's say, macroeconomic factors, unemployment rates and supply chain and that sort of thing, and if I read about specific companies, we come together and then we talk about, you know, what we each found, and then kind of, you know, just basically use each other's perspectives and insights to come up with some recommendation for the team. um, yeah, and as for checking in with your manager, feel free to do it as often or as, you know, not often as you would like. It's totally fine if you're just like working with your team and like on August 15th, you're like, here, this is our work. It's also totally fine if you want to check in with the manager once in a while. and we're like, oh, what do you think about this? We are stuck on this, or we have a difference of opinion and can't seem to reconcile that. Like provide a third perspective. Also, like we had open houses for the valuation. We will also be doing those probably once a week. And you can just that'll be similar format, open environment. Anyone can pop in and ask questions and discuss whatever they want. Yeah. Uh, any other questions? And also for like getting started, it might be awkward, like who reaches out to whom to set up the first meeting. So we're trying to do like a small team meeting, for example. So it would be me and then the three sectors: consumer discretionary, consumer staples, and IT. All the analysts in that, we would all get together, and then we can do like breakout rooms or something. So that takes the guesswork out of like who's going to reach out to whom. And after that, you can coordinate schedules and just go from there, however you wish. So we're hoping to do that early next week. Yeah.
Why did we like you explain why we have the groups, but what if we have, like, let's say 2 sector analysis report from different person? Like, is it bad that way? Like you have my report, and then you have Nancy's report from consumer staples, and I mean, why did you think the group is a good idea, better idea?
So you mean 2 different sector analysis report that you've worked on separately?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's because, like Rong explained, we use the sector analysis and we feed it into our asset allocation model, right? It goes in as inputs, and so that determines our allocation. Now, if we have 2 different reports, the only problem would be like if the reports are not concurring, which one would I, use to like do the asset allocation?
Okay.
Yeah. There would have to be some unanimous recommendation on each sector so that we can then use it as for our team to make our asset allocation for the portfolio. That makes sense.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. Anything else? Other questions? Or just, how are you all doing?
So we, as I understand, the sector analysis report is actually expected from new analysts, but old analysts will help us, or also old analyst has to contribute like us?
It's a combined effort. So I wouldn't say like somebody, new analysts do more and old analysts do less. That's not how we are envisioning this. But I mean, if it's something like, I sometimes in group projects, what we've done is if everyone starts to write on the same page, there's like, there's just differences in writing styles, differences in tone, even like, what kind of sentences you create. So one person will start taking notes even when we're discussing, and then one person will like edit them or something like that. So it does not necessarily mean that everyone will write the same amount of stuff or anything, but it should be a combined effort. The old analysts, the only thing is they will help answer questions and help you along because they know a little bit more about this stuff and they've done this before. But there's no like, oh, new analysts have to do all the work. So combined effort.
Okay.
Can I say something about that?
Yes, please.
Because actually, as an old analyst, I'm not very sure what's the best way to help the new analyst. In my opinion, it's more like, because as an old analyst, we were like new analysts before. These were like totally new thing for us before as well. So I would, as an old analyst now, I would like you guys to try that path as well. That means I want you guys to try, like, because we have different parts within a whole report. I don't like to divide like part to part to each person. That will make new analysts confused about other parts they didn't, that were not assigned to them. So for me, I haven't talked to my teams yet, but afterwards I probably will start begin with like, which part are you guys thinking that you are gonna have the most difficult like difficulties with, and I would like to let them deal with that part first. So probably, like, if you view the whole thing, I probably would take the easiest part, but it's only because I want you guys to deal with more problems, and I'll help you guys to go through those problems first. So that's my opinion, but I actually don't know will it work with my teammates, but I hope that will, because I really want all the new analysts to go through the path and try to get more understanding about these, like, especially sectors that you're going to deal with in a year or in a half a year.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's my
That's a great idea. And sometimes the "if I suffered, you must suffer too" idea works, totally works. So yeah, feel free to do whatever feels best to your group. But yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Because as my view, the longer time you spend on this project, you're gonna learn more from this project, and it will be easier when you're dealing with other things in the sector later on. So
I'd say so.
I think from the beginning, within the team, you can brainstorm what you are going to do from the research. Then what you're going to do the research, then you can separate which research you're going to focus on. So different people can have different research focus. After that, you can get back together and analyze what you get the resources from the research. Then you can get to the next stage, which part you want to focus to continue. So I think for the research part, you can separate, then you can combine all the information and make the further decisions about upon the result. So that's my suggestion. So you can use another approach.
And try to use like graphs and charts, because I don't know if that's true for everyone, but it's easier to kind of get a lot of information that way without having to read a whole lot of words.
Can I have questions on the Bloomberg? So because I was looking at the Bloomberg intelligence when I did the valuation. That I was trying to download the article to my computer because it was like crazy reading. It's like a yellow on black screen. So when I was downloading, it's asking me to set up. Have you ever downloaded the articles to your computer? Because they have me to set up like the Adobe or something.
Okay, so do you have the Citrix here, or do you have the website version?
Oh, I have a website. I think it only allow you when you use Citrix.
I have used the website, and it, I believe, has yesterday actually, like, people are saying the website is not that great and it's laggy and stuff. So I tried it and it was super laggy, so I didn't use it very long. But I tried to download an article. I think I abandoned it midway because it was taking so long. But if you use the Citrix, like if you use the app, are you able to use the app, or absolutely not?
I can use Citrix.
Try to use the app. We can just do this, like you click on this and then actions, download. Still takes a while even with the app, but yeah, it's at least easier. Right. So here it says, and then I want to save it. And then, every time it asks me this, but I should probably like check the "don't ask me again," which I don't. So yeah, and I'm just gonna.
Yeah, because when I download, it asked me to like set up something. I think because I'm using the web versions.
Yeah, that could be it. So yeah, it has been not bad for me. Let's see, do I have my desktop on here? What? Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, just when I read like a lot of articles, it was just crazy looking at the yellow like wording.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Download it.
Things on there.
Thank you.
I think I use web version, and
you can download.
Yeah, I can download. When you're doing download, there's one place you click the download to another place. Then you can choose the local disk. Maybe I can try here. Do you want